Hello, WeQuilt Studio here, and this lesson is going to be about 3D puff embroidery. And what you see here is a word that I did digitize so that it would work with 3D puff foam. And if you look at it in vector view down here, and I zoom in, I'll just use my plus sign, you can kind of see, I'll go ahead and view, layout, take off the grid. You can kind of see that, for one thing, I don't have much underlay. So I actually don't have really any underlay except a center line. And then you'll notice that my density looks pretty tight. Well, yes, my density is at 0.2 and instead of like say 0.4. And you will also notice that I have little satins here, 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 here. If we look at the E, I didn't do the E yet. So normally I would have to put a little cap of satin on the ends of the actual satins within the letter because that holds the foam in. So you just put them at the ends. You know, the stitches are going, I show you here, the stitches are going, you know, from here to here, and then this is kind of open. So that's why we have to put a cap like this one you see up here in the pretty much like perpendicular direction to which way the satin's going. So I haven't done the E. And then the other thing you'll see is this little extra satin, and notice that it's not tight like all the rest of these. These are 0.2 mils in density, and so are the letters, but these little light fill satins or what have you, they're just the 0.4 density, the regular density. And what those are doing is they're holding, like whenever you have a satin going one way and then another satin going perpendicular, they can pull on each other. Like, you know, this satin can pull on this one. And even if they're like, even if they're both going in the same direction, you still want to have something here to, you know, hold them together, because otherwise they could separate and then you could see the foam through the stitches. So that's what this is, because you have this one here and this other one going the other way. And then I have this one down here because, you know, the V, these are coming down this way, and then these are kind of, you know, they're turning, so it's good to have something there because this one is like, I don't know, it just seems like I felt like it was necessary there. So, and then the O didn't really have anything, to be honest. It really didn't need anything. The L, of course, needed the caps. And so it is a technique, you know, with the foam. It's something that you usually would put on a cap. Most people, you know, it's such a dense fill, and then you have the thick foam and whatnot. I mean, you could put it on a sweatshirt or a handbag or other things as well. But since I assumed that this would go on a cap, I did digitize it from center out. So you'll notice that the O is stitching first and then the L. So there's a little connection there. Then after that, the V picks up here. So you have the O, the L, the V, and then the E, and there's a little connection up there. So, and that Embird will do that for you. The other thing with a cap is you're supposed to, not only are you supposed to go from center out and center out, but you're supposed to go from bottom up because the way a cap is shaped. Now, Embird doesn't technically have a bottom up, so you have to kind of place your start and end points accordingly. You'll have to maybe change some of them. The V I really wasn't able to change because it kind of intersects down here. So it was a little difficult to change it. So it is stitching from here down, but then this one's going up. So with all that said, I will go ahead and I'll do a Control A and just do a sew sim so that you could at least see how it sews, and then we'll recreate it. So here's the sew sim down here. You have to select them all. I hit Control A to do that, and I'll hit the sew sim. Okay, so the O starts with, you know, the outline. And notice too, notice how long my center outline is. It's 4 millimeters long. And that's so that we don't cut the foam, you know, because this center outline is what's going to be the first stitch that's going to be holding down the foam. So we just want to make the stitches long. We don't want to cut the foam. After the satin stitches, then that's fine, you know. But in the tight 0.2 mil density on the satin is what'll cut the stitches. And also the end caps will cut the stitches as well. And you know, they'll prevent the foam from coming out. So it kind of has a twofold job. So I'll go ahead and finish running this. And if I pause it, you can see up here, these are little connections, and this is the jump. So this will be after the L stitches, there'll be a tie off, and then it'll start the V. So that's what we mean by a jump. So let me just go back here. Let me slow this down just a little bit. So it goes up there, and then it comes down here, and then it creates it. So it's going from bottom to top. And then the V is making its cap. And this is the little fill. And I could have made that a little bit longer. And notice how my cap, well, this one doesn't have a cap, but it's stitching from bottom to top. Let's go into normal view. Notice how my caps come in, you know, like a trapezoid, so that you don't see them out here, you know. Oh, I must have paused it. Oh, when I hit normal, it paused. So there's the little fill. And that's, that just is so you don't see the foam. And again, you can make it a little bit longer. I mean, you don't want to make it too long so that it, interferes with the pretty stitches, but I could have made it a little longer. Now these caps are coming right, snapping right to the points of the letter there. But this one, I probably could have made it bigger, and I could have even shaped it so that it was more pointed. So there you go. So here's 3D again. And you'll notice too, I'll hit stop. Let me just grab the magnifier here. If I zoom in on this here, and let's go back into 3D. Notice how there's a stitch point there. When you land a stitch point in between your letters, it basically makes this connection disappear, because remember, this is a connection. It's not a tie-off, so you don't ever want to cut this. And that's just more efficient. The more connections you can have, the better. And what I did was I turned this connection into a manual stitch, and you'll see that at the very end. I turned this entire connection into a manual stitch, and then I just landed a stitch point. A manual stitch is as if you were an editor, and you'll see that later. So let's go ahead then. I've Control A, Control 1 brings that into view, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll actually zoom out. If I hit up here, it'll just go 1 to 1. And I'll go back into vector view, and I'll go view, bring back my grid. And I'll just take this one, I'll hold control, and I'll just move it up. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create our text, and I just used the Arial font, and you'll see when I hit text. So I hit text, font engine text. So you do have to have the font engine add-on to do this, unless if you have any Embird alphabets, that's what text is. You could use that as well. So we'll just hit font engine text, click on work area. So I'll click somewhere down here and towards the center. Come over to the scale. I have to type in a letter first. So I'll put my caps lock on. I'll just type LOVE. Looks like I have the same height that I used for this one. So I wanted it 20 mils tall, so that's about 3/4 of an inch tall. And if you want to change that, aspect ratios on, you can click, the arrow, this icon. And if you type it in down here in the field, then you hit enter twice to get out of this window or the check mark. But if you hit it up here, you only have to hit enter once to get out of this window. But since I typed in here already, Control A 20, I have to hit enter twice. Okay. And then you can change the spacing while you're here. So you can come up here to spacing. And if I want to, just do the characters, because I don't have any words or lines, I'll just put my right mouse here, and you can watch it get smaller. Now, these two are getting smaller than these because they were smaller to begin with. So at that point, you may say to yourself, let's zoom in. You have to zoom in here. You can't use your plus sign in this mode. So we'll kind of leave that space, but then let's go ahead over here to characters to move the letters. So here's this dot, it'll move both of these. That's okay, I guess. And then this one. Okay, let me come over here and see that spacing. I guess it's okay. This one, it looks a little closer. And then up here, you'll see that it's, on center. That's fine. But up here, I changed this. Usually it's on left to right, that it'll stitch left to right. But since I'm assuming it's a ball cap, I'm going to go from center. Now I don't have any words, so I don't need this. But from center out is what this means. So it'll start here and stitch out and then come back and stitch the V and the E. So from center, and then I chose a column instead of the plain filler auto column because columns are they're already separated, and if I have to add those fills somewhere, those little satin fills. I call them satin fills because they were auto column fills. If I have to add that, and the caps, not really, but columns sometimes are easier to work with because they're already in separate little sections. That makes sense. And a lot of times they're prettier. So I chose column for this, and then no outline or anything. So 0. And I always choose this for my connections. That means all connections, because you can always delete your connections. It's better to just have them all there. And a lot of times it helps you to see where things start and end when you have the connections in. It's just, I don't know, it's just helpful. So, and there you go. So then you hit the check mark. You have to hit the check mark because if you hit this first, then it's like you escaped out of it. So we'll hit the check mark. And here it is. It looks like it's the same color. So let's make it a different color. And you'll notice that this bright yellow connection, that's when you see that, that's telling you that you don't really need it. If I hit Control-1 to zoom in on it, it's not really letting me. I'll hit my plus sign. It's like it's a moot point. It's not necessary. We have this connection, and if I hit my delete button, then you see we still have this connection, and there's no scissors between this connection and this next letter, this one. So whenever you see a big yellow circle like that, you can delete it. So let me go ahead, and I'm going to just take these and hold shift and then right click, group, ungroup 2. So group 2 is taken. That's why this is highlighted. So the only thing we could do is group 3. Just group those. And then I'll hit Control A and hit Control to deselect that, and then Control-1 again. So I guess the first thing we could do is, with all the columns here selected, let's just go into parameters here. And you see that it said 0.2. That's because that's what I used previously, but then quickly it went back to the default. So that's just a matter of, maybe my processor speed isn't fast enough, but So our spacing on our satin columns is going to be 0.2. So click on the word spacing, click backspace 2, check. And we don't want auto shortening because we don't want a bunch of little stitches that are going to cut the foam. So that's off. And this is fine as far as number 1, you know. Number 2 is just slightly different. Notice that this one is slanted, but I don't know if it makes a whole lot of difference. So I'm just going to keep it on 1. Up here is the column mode. We don't want strips or multi-layer. So that's the first column, and then, or tab, and then this is your underlay, and we don't want it to be automatic. We're just gonna leave it on, take these off and just leave it on center, because the center underlay is what's going to hold the foam down, and we don't want to put all these stitches in it and cut the foam. And that's why we have our, that's another reason why we have our density on our columns set to 0.2, because, you know, we don't have any underlay hardly. So, and then the second tab is like, how do you want your stitch lengths for your underlay? Well, we don't want to inherit it from our overall settings here. And here it is here, the fill in the column. So in other words, they were saying, do you want us to take your underlay stitch lengths from the overall settings? There's the fill, here's the columns. Okay. Well, let's go back to our column, and let's go back to this tab. So we don't want to inherit from those overall settings, because our center underlay, we want to make it long, like I was mentioning before. So we want it to be 4 mils max. So the min, so we're just going to say 4 for the min and 4 for the max. So that'll be the length of our center underlay, so it won't cut the foam. We don't want an edge underlay. Well, this is inheriting, where we're going to inherit from. So I didn't really even have to switch that off, because we already said we're not using it. This tab is just for like your stitch lengths of it. So this doesn't matter if I check it or uncheck it. Sorry about that. And then this one, we don't want to check auto corners, because that like creates this overlap. So we'll uncheck that. This is fine. Cover stitches is basically what we're doing. We could, if you turn this off, that means it's only going to do the underlay, but we're doing the cover stitches too. And then this is your pull comp, and 0.1 is the default, so we'll leave it there. This we don't want. And, you know, of course we want this envelope. And then this is gradient. We don't need that. So, and you can notice that the design is gone, so just hit Control 1 and it'll bring it back into view. And I can hit apply now if you want. And just so you know, my settings for my ties and whatnot are set up here in overall. So if I click overall and this tab here, these are the tie-up stitches, and I have mine all set to 6 for everything, for the number of ties, and my stitch length at 0.7. And when you set them like that, and if you want to always keep those as your default, come up to the 3 dots, store as default for all object types. And I already hit apply, so. And then you can go back to column. Now the connections, we're going to add more connections, so we can do that later, but just so you know, the connections is the one that we can only go up to 1.5 on the min, and then the max we'll put at 4.0. But we're going to get lots more connections, so we'll set them all when we're done. You know, we'll make sure that they're correct. So I'll just hit apply, that as well. And then I'll just hit done. And so now we have to go and create our, I'll create our little caps. So starting with the O, we don't have to do anything. And you can see that the O starts here. Normally, you'll see these little red dots that shows you where things end, but it's interesting that on the columns, they don't show you that. The E is made of multiple objects, and you can see the red dots show where each of those objects end, up here, here, and here. But since the O and the L and the V are all one object, you don't see the red dot. That is interesting, because on a fill you do. You on a fill stitch and outlines and everything. Connections, you can see the connections. So yeah, I don't know why those aren't in there. Maybe it's something that they forgot, you know, because this is a new, you know, a newer module. But so we don't really need to do the O, and it ends here. We can clearly see it because the connection is there. So let's go ahead and click on the L and hit Control 1 to zoom in. And when we look at it, you think to yourself, okay, well, I would like to see how it's stitching. So let's just hit the edit over here. And you could see the start is a plus, has a plus sign. So it's starting there and it's ending up here. Whenever you hit the edit button, the end node is highlighted. But what's interesting about columns is, even though it's showing that it ends here, technically it ends there, the one across from it. And that's very confusing. Believe me, it messes me up all the time. So, okay, so that looks good. So it's starting here and it's ending up there. Well, then we want it to end up there because we want it to stitch from bottom to top because it's a cap. So we're not going to change the, you know, we're not going to reverse the direction of the stitching or anything. But if we're going to put a cap here and here, which cap are we going to have stitch first? Well, we probably want to stitch this cap first and then make a connection down to this cap, so then it could start stitching its satin down here like it wants to and like it should. So our first trapezoid will be up here, and I can actually, to be honest, I'll just go ahead and for right now, I'm just going to hit enter. That closes it. And for my trapezoid, I'm going to make it a satin, I mean a fill type of satin, which we call an auto column. So I'm going to click the fill, and I'm going to click once, just anywhere up there. And I might just hit shape and I don't really have to do it this way, but it's easy if I hit rectangle. And if I just draw a rectangle, if I want to be proactive, I could start down here and I'll just hit enter. And I'm actually going to hit the edit button now. And I use my magnifier to draw a box and zoom in up here. So it's starting up there, and since we're coming from the O, which is way down here, we probably wanted to start like, I don't know, maybe here. I'm trying to think ahead if we want it here or here, but either way, it's going to be one of these two at the bottom. Before I set that start point, I guess I'll go ahead and snap these first. And so over here are your snapping tools. And so I have snap to node checked. This will snap to this node of the previously laid down, nodes of this L. So I'll just snap it. And you can see that it kind of showed up. It's interesting. There it went away and I zoomed out. Now you can see that little node there. So we snap that one. And then this one, since it's starting here, that's the plus sign you see. And then this long one shows that it's also ending here. So when I drag this one, see, that's why I was wondering which one I should do first, but it doesn't matter. This is the end node. So if I take the start node and snap it there, I could snap this one there, or I could hit close edges. It doesn't matter. But then down here, we want this to be a nice trapezoid. We can drag down a guide, and oops, I accidentally right clicked. And we probably want this to be about 2 millimeters. So this is 1 mil from 8 to 9. This is 2 mils. So maybe we'll drag. Oh, I have my lock guides on. Let me hit enter to get out to finalize this for just a minute. And let me go to options, guides. See, it's checked. And I'll go back into edit. And so let's take this and just bring it up here. So now 2 mils. And so now let's snap this to the guide. I'm going to snap to guide and snap to object edge. So here's snap to guide. Check that. Here's snap to object edge. And uncheck snap to node. Because I'm going to first make a square, because I'm just going to show you something, a trick, and I'm going to snap this there. So it's oh, I just moved the guide. That's another thing I have to show you. Do you notice how when I come to the red node, I get a black thin plus sign? That means I'm selecting the node. But if I come up just a hair more, I get a white plus sign. That means I'm selecting the guide. So I'll select the node and I'll snap it. So it's snapping to this object edge and to the guide. And so did this one. I think it did. Let me get the black cross here. Okay. Because when I bring this in, I want to bring it in about 1.5 mils. I kind of want it to be exact just because I'm OCD. You don't have to be that exact, but since I have a perfect rectangle and the arrow is pointing here, I can come up here and click insert, and it'll insert exactly in half between here and here. And if I come up here, let me think how I want to do this. If I click this one, the arrow's pointing to this one, I'll click insert. Okay. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to, I'll just click down here and I'm going to right click, place start point here. And since this is a fill, you also have to tell it where the end point is. Place end point here. And so it's starting here and the direction it's going is this way. And let me just hit enter. Let's go up, let's click outside, let's go up and just lock them because then I won't move them. So the guide is locked. So now if I try to move it, it won't move. So I'll go ahead back into this fill and I'll hit edit for just a minute. I'm going to come up here and place my start and end point up there again. And then I'm going to snap to the guide and the object edge. So the guide, uncheck that, and object edge and guide. And so now if I click on here, okay, I know that's on the guide and the object edge, so I'm going to delete this one for now. Click here. Okay. Now I'll click this one so that I get the arrow pointing at that one, and now do an insert. Perfect. This one's already on. So what I'm going to do now is take this, and it doesn't matter because I won't move the guide even though I got a white plus sign, and I'm going to move it. So I'm still snapping to guide. Object edge doesn't matter because you can only snap to any other previously laid down object, not the one you're editing. So that's about a half, and then this would be about 1.5 mils. And so you can see this shape if I started here, and let me just right click, place start point here, right click, place end point here. If I start here, 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 and up here, well, if I want to recreate this shape, that means I want to mirror it over. Well, that means I have to delete my end node here. So hit end on your keyboard so that the end node is selected, and hit delete. And then that's selected, hit delete. That's selected, hit delete. So now I have this shape, and my last node is selected. To mirror it, we go up to edge, mirror, duplicate and mirror horizontally. And then there's our perfect trapezoid. So you can apply this for just about anything you do in Embird. You know, you can apply this technique. Now we have our trapezoid, but we want it to start and end in a certain spot. So we'll click this one. We'll click outside because it looks like we have more than one thing selected. So I clicked outside. This one is selected. I'll right click, place start point here. And then, so this, if our start point is here, and it's going to stitch, you know, over to here, it'd be nice that our end point is here. So we'll right click, place end point here. Okay. And we don't really need these nodes anymore, to be honest. I could leave them there because I'm going to copy and paste this. to use in the other letters. But yeah, we'll just leave them for now. It's fine. So I'll hit enter, and I'll just kind of I'll just hit Control A, hold Control, deselect, then Control 1. So there's our first little tab. So our cap, and let's go ahead and move it into place. So it's got to be before the L. So we'll just drag it. Whoops, I held it too long. So when you get the white hand, usually you have to come over here with the white hand and drag it. Whoops, I'm holding it too long. Okay, there we go. I did it fast enough. Insert before. So you drag it up and then you let go and you get this menu, and then you left click insert before. So now you look at it and you say, well, this long connection now wants to connect to this cap. And yes, we do want it to connect there, but we have to click on that connection and edit it. So I clicked on it. I'll hit Control 1 to bring it into view. I'll zoom out a little with my minus button on my keyboard. Hit edit, and it's a straight line. You can tell because it's showing us that we could make it a curved line. But that's okay. We kind of want it to be straight. But with the last node selected there, we'll hit insert, and we'll drag this down, but to bring it within the L, and hold down your right mouse button and then drag the screen. I'm not really touching the screen. My pen keeps right clicking. Sorry, I use a pen tablet. Let me right click and drag it down. Okay, there we go. Probably need more nodes because we got to get one snapped there. That might be all we need for right now. So with this selected and the arrow pointing to this red node, we'll click insert again, and let's snap to node and uncheck everything else. Take this and snap it. I'm going to bring this down a little, and I don't like that this line is so close to this edge. So with this selected, I'm going to insert one more time, and I'm just going to drag it in at so that I have like a 45-degree angle here. That's usually how you see them. They're usually come in at a 45 so that this thread is not close to these two threads. So, well, these aren't threads over here. They're going to be needle penetrations, but that looks pretty good now. So I'll hit enter, and so that's my connection now, and it's going up there. So let's select it over here so we don't disturb it, and we'll copy and paste it. So hit Control C, Control V, and it comes down to the bottom, and we're going to drag it. My pen keeps doing that, sorry. We're going to take it and drag it down because we're going to put it down here, and we want to rotate it to the right because we want the short side to be over here on the left. So we're going to rotate it. We go to transform, flip and rotate, and we want to rotate it right. Okay, and then we're just going to kind of drag it into place. Now you notice this is narrower, so let's go ahead and kind of do a Control 1 to zoom in. We can make it shorter here and then just kind of wing it a little bit. We'll go ahead and snap the nodes in a minute, but That kind of gets us close. So I just drag the two side handles. And I just want to get it a little bit closer. That's good. Because I don't want it to be, you know, wider than 2 mils. I mean, if it's slightly wider, that's fine. But I just want to be a little consistent. So now I'll go ahead and hit edit. And then I'm just going to snap these nodes. So I've got snap to node on. So I'm going to snap these to the corner. There, it's snapped. And this is when this gets in the way. So let's click it and delete it. And we'll snap it up there. And then since this one is going to stitch, let me zoom out with my minus button. It's going to stitch after this one up here. So then this one up here, we have it ending up, let's see where it's, I thought we had it ending here at that point right there at that corner. So I'm going to have this one start where it is, because then the connection will be like this. So I'll have it start where it is, but I'll have it end. This can get confusing. If I hit end on my keyboard, yes, this is the last node. This, you know, this closes the actual object. Control Z to get it back. So that's the last node of this object, but the object is actually ending up here. So that's why you see these long little, this L here, that's like the end. So in other words, it's going to stitch like this, a satin, and it's going to end there. But we don't want it to end there. We want it to end here because we know that this L is starting here. So we want to click here and right click, place, fill endpoint. They call it a fill even though it's a satin fill. We're going to change this in a minute. I never changed this one to an auto column up here, so I'm going to select them both when we're done, and I'll change them both together. That way it won't be too confusing. But we have our endpoint there, so place, fill endpoint there, and it's starting there. So I'm going to hit enter. And let's go move it up into position. So it's coming after this one. So let go, insert after. Okay. And then you see a scissors. Well, we have to make a connection. So we don't want to see the scissors. So right click, create connection to previous object. And there's our connection. Let's click on it and then edit that connection. It's a curve. We want it to be straight. So let's click straight and then let's hit insert. Okay, and we'll just bring it down like this. And that looks pretty good. Hit enter. So now all the scissors are gone and things are looking good. It's looking good. So pretty much our L is done, except like I said, we have to change our fills to actually be auto column fills. So we'll click the first one, or the one up there at the top, and hold control and click the other one, and now we'll go into params. And you can see that the angles are different. That's fine. We can leave that go. But we're going to change the fill mode to auto column. And we want the spacing, even on this one, to be 0.2, just like the letter, because we want it to be tight so it holds in that foam. And then we don't need use pattern. Come to this tab. We don't want any underlay at all on this satin. Nothing, not even center. Click here. This doesn't even matter because we're not having any underlay whatsoever. And then for our pull comp on this, I've been setting it to 0 because I don't want it to stick out. That just means as it stitches, it's going to stitch out longer. And we don't really want it to stick out of this satin. So I put that to 0. You can see up here, it's the way it's, when you make the pull comp bigger, it just means that it stitches out longer. The stitch becomes longer. And we don't want that for this. And auto shortening is off. Now, I do want to address a few more things about the L before I leave it. And that is, since I have these connections to the tabs, I really don't need the underlay anymore. That's just gonna, cause more issues. It possibly could, cut the foam and so on. So we're just gonna go ahead and click on the L, the column, and go into params. And then for the underlay tab, we're not even going to have a center underlay. So none of this even matters. And this stays the same and so on. The stitching stays the same and we'll hit apply. So now basically what's going to happen is it's going to come from the O and it's going to stitch up to this tab. So start here, stitch the satin, and end here. And that's what you want, by the way, on a tab. You want it to start on one end and stitch to the other because you, again, don't want any extra travel stitches or anything in here to cut the foam or make it look funky underneath the foam. So it just stitches there, ends here, travels down, stitches this tab. It starts here and then it'll end up here and then it'll stitch your satin from bottom to top like we wanted to for a cap. So in that case, then the L would be done. So I'm going to go ahead and select the first object of the L, hold shift, select the last object, and then just right click and group. And group 1 is fine. And hit Control S. So, and the reason why I didn't take away the underlay right away for all these letters is because sometimes it offers me guidance, and sometimes, like in the situation with the O, I didn't need to get rid of it because I didn't need to add any tabs to the O. So the O was just left. So then going to the V, we're going to use the same tabs from the L. So I should have ungrouped that, or I should have not grouped it yet. I want to copy and paste it. So I'll right click, group, ungroup. We'll just take this one, the top one, and if I zoom out, just so you can see it, and I'll hit Control C, Control V. So, and then I'm just going to hold my control button and drag it, but it might accidentally resize because I'm zoomed out. Let me just try it and see. Okay, it did it okay. Although my pen tablet doesn't go that far. I'm just going to get it kind of close and hit Control-1 and zoom in. Now, you can't really see the object edges on the V, and that's because I have the stitches generated. Or, I have the view object boundaries unchecked, but let me just go ahead and either do object, erase stitches on the V, or I could edit it to get rid of the stitches. I'll just do erase stitches. So now you kind of see the boundaries, just so that you could see them, because we're going to snap too. So I have this kind of in the right position. And, but here's the thing. Let's click on the V here, which it's already selected, and hit Control-1, and let's think about how we want these tabs to stitch, because the final satin of the V is going to end right here because it's going to connect to the E. So, and remember, the V it's got a tie on when it starts because we're doing from center out. So the O and the L stitched, and now the V starts with its own tie. That's why you see a scissor there. But the V is going to end here with the satin, the actual column satin. So let's backtrack. Before the satin stitches, we want the caps to stitch, and before the caps stitch, we want our underlay to stitch. Well, we're probably going to make our own underlay on this one, and just delete the underlay on the V, so just keep that in mind. But just know that before the V stitches, we're going to stitch the caps. So if the last cap has to stitch over here, because then the V will stitch the satin down and up and end here. Well, if this has to be the last cap, then, we probably shouldn't be doing it first. But that's okay. I'm just going to hit Control-C, Control-V again, and I'll just move that one over. I'll hold Control and move it over. Okay. So we can put these two up in position, and then we can edit them. So I'll just hold Control and select the bottom one, and then I'll just left click and drag up before the V. Let go, insert before. So I'll click on the first one. And so I'll zoom in, and I'll just hold my Control and move it over here just to kind of get it better, and hit edit. Give it a minute. Okay, snap to node is on. So I'm going to, this is going to get in the way, so I'll just delete it. And I'm going to delete this one too. We really don't need them, because remember, these should start on one end and end on the other. So we don't really need the center ones. So I'm just going to click this and bring it away, and then snap it to the node, and then this one, snap it. And then down here, I want these to be better situated. I'm holding my right mouse and then panning without touching the screen. So to get these still, straight on this straight line, I'm just going to pull down a guide, and I'm going to kind of put it there. I don't know if my guide is locked. Let me see, because you can't you cannot lock and unlock your guides while you're in edit mode, and I can't remember if I locked them. So let me just see if I can move this. No, I can't move it, so my guides are locked. So that's good. So now instead of snap to node, I'm just going to uncheck that and do snap to guide right here. And I'll just make these look a little better. And this is my end. I kind of like it to be from, you could see 49 to 50, that's 1 mil, and that's like a half mil almost. So about 1.5 mils in. And right about there, I'll close edges just to make sure it snaps correct. And then this one, this is a half and one. I'll just snap it like right there. It's not, it's just snapping to the guide. It's not snapping to the grid, but it's fine. It's pretty good. And so we have this one now. It's starting here and it's ending there. And so we have to remember we want our underlay to come to here as well when we do our underlay manually. So we're going to do it manually on this one. So that looks good. I'm just going to hit enter. And then this one, whoops, I'll have to click it here. You shouldn't really click on the screen because you end up possibly moving it. So I'll just click it here and hit Control 1. Hold my control and kind of move it into position a little better. Click Edit. And again, I'll just delete these. And I'll snap. Oh, I got snap to guide on. Snap to node. And then click here, snap to node. And then this guide is already on. Click snap to guide, uncheck that. So for this one, 1.5 is about there. And this one, it always clicks the end node, but let's see, about 1.5 would be around there. Let's just hit close edges. So this one is starting here and ending here. So let's think about that. If the other one, this one here, I thought it was starting here and ending here. And that can be confusing. So let's see. Let's make sure. Because it shows here that it's ending on the left. Let's hit edit. So this is our end point. But here's what's confusing about fills and even auto column fills. It showed that yellow circle as if it were ending here. And this always trips me up. Yes, the end node, if I hit end on my keyboard, the end node is there. That's why you see the yellow circle, Control C. But our actual stitching, we asked it to end here. You know, you could have right-clicked on the node, place, fill endpoint here. Now, if we would have made this as a regular column and not an auto column fill, and we would have just started here on this side and made our column, it would have ended over here. But you still have to edit them if you want them flipped or you know, with columns, you have to either swap edges or reverse nodes order. So you still have some editing to do, possibly with regular columns. So just know that these could have been regular columns or auto column fills. But also don't get confused with this red dot, because you see in the object panel here, the inspector panel, the red dot is showing where it actually is ending its stitching. But when we edit it, the actual end node is always highlighted, and you know, you can even click end on your keyboard and you know, the end node is there, and so that's what the yellow circle is. It's very confusing. So I mean, you do need that difference between the end node and the end of your stitching. It is nice to have the different options, so we don't really want to complain, but you want to be aware of, you know, an end node or end of stitching, two different things. And the yellow circle shows the end node, and the red dot shows the end of stitching. Control C, hit enter. So in that case, it's almost better to look here. So this first one is ending there, and then the second one is ending there, which means it's starting here. So they're both the same as far as where they're starting and ending. So when we create a connection, okay, to this one, it's going to be kind of nice because it'll be on the inside. Because this one is ending here, this one is starting here, so it'll be on the inner part of the V. So let's just zoom out and let's scroll up a little. And let's right click on this one and create a connection to previous. So it's going to create this connection straight across, but of course we'll edit it. And it's a curve, let's make it a straight. And with this selected, insert, and we probably, I mean, we could add another node, so insert again and make it so it's like that. You know, it might look better. And so you think to yourself, well, could that be my underlay? I mean, it's only on the inside, but we can go ahead and add some curves and edit it. For one, we can bring it down a little more, so it's kind of, these nodes are in the center of each leg. And then with this one selected, the arrow pointing at it, we can make it a curve and then just drag that to kind of curve over. Maybe like that. We can add another straight node here so it just comes over with, you know, straight. Like if we clicked here and did insert and then clicked on this one and made it straight and then just brought that like that. You know, there's so many ways you can do that. And the same thing for this one. Now the arrow's pointing there, so click up here, make it a curve, and then so now it's kind of in the center. So that could be my underlay, and we'll fix the stitch lengths when we're all done. We'll change them all to 4.0. So I'll just click enter or hit the check mark. So then let's go into the actual column object of the V and take away its underlay because we really don't need it now. We have a nice underlay that's tacking things down, and like I said, we'll change that, the connections, when we're all done. So click params. We'll go into the second tab and we'll take off the center underlay. And then of course this tab doesn't matter, it's just the stitch lengths, and this stays the same, everything else stays the same, and we'll just click apply. And so there you see, let's click done. I'm not sure if I generated these. Let's see. I'll hold shift and come up here and I'll generate those. And what you'll notice is we don't have this one here. We don't have it connecting to our V now, to our V column. You see the scissors there. Well, that's because we have this one stitching first, and this V column now, because we took away the underlay, let's click on it and see where it's starting. So I hit edit, so it's starting over here. We can make it so it's starting over here like we wanted it to, and it's stitching down and then up, and it's ending here. It says here, but technically it'll end here, and then it'll make the connection to the E. So our satin is starting here. However, you can see the stitching, the red stitching here is ending right here. And since our satin is starting here, we need our stitching to end on this side. So we're going to edit this tab, and instead of the start point being here, we'll just put it here. And so we'll click here and right click, place start point here, and then we'll just click here, place end point here. Remember now, these are the stitching start and end points. And let's hit enter, and you notice how our little connection here moved. It moved over to here. So this tab stitches, it makes a connection to this tab. So let's check out that connection and make sure. Okay, it looks good. I could maybe drag this a little more in the center. Let's edit it. Pull this up. You know, I'm purposely making them different. This one I made curved, this one I made like this, and I don't think it really matters. But so now I'll hit enter. You see the scissors went away on the V. And again, just so you know, I could have made these tabs as regular columns over here. And maybe I'll do that on the E when we get to the E, just so you can see the difference between, you know, an auto column fill and a regular column tab. So it would be kind of like the V. So then from here to hold shift here, that's our V. And you may say to yourself, well, if it starts stitching up here, it's stitching down with the satin. Okay, I'm talking about the satin now, sorry. You may say to yourself, well, if it's starting the satin up here and it's stitching down, aren't we supposed to stitch our satins from bottom to top? And yes, you are on a cap. And, you know, this one is stitching bottom to top. The only way you can really get around it with a letter like this is to stitch your tab, stitch a connection down to a separate object here. So, and we could do that, but I'm just going to see if it would be okay just to leave it as is, because we've stitched our tabs up here, so hopefully that holds the fabric in place for when we stitch downward. I'm hoping. But if not, you would have to make two separate columns, in which case you'd have ties, tie-ons, and tie-offs. So you would basically just click this, Control C, Control V. You'd have another one. And I'll just actually make two of them, Control C, Control V, because I'll do them down here. So you'd have two objects. And I'll hold Control and select this one. I'll just make them blue for right now. So I'll select this one, and this one will be this left object. So, but we have to edit it and delete the right side. So the end is there, perfect. So I delete all the way down, and then click here, delete kind of all the way down, because you have to have an overlap. So this would have to come in just a little bit. You know, we'd have to have some sort of an overlap there. And you may even want to bring this over. So you can drag this because you can see they were doubled up. On this one, we'll want it to come in. We don't want it on the object edge because it's going to get overlapped by this here, this next leg. So now this one though has to start stitching at the bottom. Right now, let me zoom out. It's starting on this edge here. So if I reverse nodes order, it would start down here. Edge, reverse nodes order, it would start down here, and that's fine. So if we let it start down here, that means it stitches like this, the satin, and if I hit end on my keyboard, even though this is highlighted, this is where it would end, and then it would tie off there, because then we'd have to come down and start this leg down here and stitch upward, and so that it ends up here. So we would leave this as it is, hit enter, and we'd come down to this one and hit edit. And so this one has to start down here. We have to delete this left side, so let's reverse nodes order because we can't delete a starting node. So edge, reverse nodes order, and then here just delete, 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 that's fine. Click up there, delete, 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 and that's a double node down there. I don't know if you can see it. So, and we'll just, we won't delete that one because that's our corner node. We'll delete this one. And let's zoom back out. I'll just click that to do 1-to-1 and then get the magnifier, and I'll just do it like that. It's the quickest way. And so just use my plus sign. So now you say, okay, well, this one, we probably wanted to start, we can have it, if what I would do with this, now that it's two separate objects, I would probably not have a satin going this way, but we have to remember this is foam. So if I have the satins going this way and have this, you know, completely separate leg, maybe have it slanted a bit like the other one, remember then those horizontal type stitches are going to pull on these. So we'd have to put a little patch here in between them. And we'll get to the patch when we do the E. We're going to put a patch here where you have stitches going this way and then stitches going that way. You have to put like a light patch here, a light satin patch underneath so that the foam doesn't show. So on the V, we'd have to decide, well, do we want to leave it like it is and let it gently go into, you know, this direction like it was originally stitched? That's why I like to let them stitch themselves, because I like to see which way I like better. So for me, in this case, I'm going to just let it be and see how it goes. But we still have to change the nodes order because it's starting up here. We want it to start down here. So we'll do edge, reverse nodes order. So now it's starting here and it's stitching here, and then it's going to make this gentle transition from this direction to this direction, hopefully. So we'll go ahead and let it do that. And if I click end on my keyboard, this is what highlights, but it's really going to end there, which will make our connection to our E. So we're good there. So I'll hit enter. And then, so we have each of these, but a lot of digitizers, when they do something manual like this, they like to make little starting outlines inside. but we have our little tabs to contend with inside. So let's go ahead and copy those from our green ones. So this is all grouped. Let me just bring it back. It's a long press. It's always a pain. Okay, and I'll ungroup it. I could have just copied and pasted it and it would come down here and I could have ungrouped it. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this, this, and this. So I'll hold Shift and Control C, Control V. I'll just bring it down. And so these two we're stitching first. Let's go ahead and hold Control. I'm going to hold Control on all of these and turn them blue. And I could go ahead and hide these again. Sorry, I'm showing you two different scenarios. Let me hold Shift. I'll group these. And I'll just hide them again. Okay. So then down here, we had this one stitching first, so let's go through that scenario. If this stitches first, and then it travels down, and then it stitches this tab, so this whole long travel, it stitches this tab or cap, well then we still have to travel down to start stitching this satin from bottom up. So we'd have to make another travel stitch. So we're going to click here and hold Shift, and we'll just select them all and drag them up through left mouse, let go, insert before. So this one stitches this travel connection to there, and then we need it to connect to this first column. So we'll just right click, create connection. It's the easiest way. And here's our connection. And it made the connection on the outside. So in that case, we really don't want that, and we probably want our cap not to finish up here anymore. We want it to finish down here. So we'll want it to finish on this point. So let's go back to that and hit Edit. And I'll zoom in a little bit just so I could get it closer. So remember, this is an auto column. Now it's starting here, okay? And if we have it end here, we might just get an extra line of satin coming, line of thread coming down. So let's just see, because we don't want things to like cross over and make travel stitches and whatnot. So let's just do, whoops, not insert. Let's right click here, place fill endpoint here. See how our connection jumped over to here now. And so we'll just take that and we'll edit it and kind of put it like that so it's not too close to the edge. So then this satin will stitch then from the bottom up. When this finishes, you see there's a scissor here. That means that this one has a tie because it starts stitching down here, comes all the way up, and it ties off. And it's going to tie off up there. If I hit Edit, starts here, stitches, and it ends there, and that's where the tie is. So this is if we have to stitch from bottom up. And then for this one, since this area is technically not stitched yet, a lot of digitizers will make an outline to the beginning of this, just so that the tie-on is not showing. Because if I just left it like that, if I hit edit, it's going to make a tie on right there. And it might be ugly. So a lot of people will put like a line here, and which is kind of cool in this scenario because I already have a line there, so it'll kind of balance it out. So I'll just hit enter and I'll click the outline and I'll just click and click. Now I could zoom in. It makes you think that you want to snap it to this, but this is already taken and it's done and stitched. Like this was that first leg. This here has to snap up here because that's where this right satin is, you know, stitching or whatever. If I zoom out, you might be able to see the node. Yeah, I don't see the node. Okay, there, I see it. I zoomed in. So you can just snap it since I clicked snap to node. So, and then I'll just, I'm going to just hit 1 to 1 and then zoom in with the magnifier. It's just quicker. So this is just this outline, but I do want to pull this in. I'm going to make it a curve. I know it's a straight line because I'm offered to make it a curve. That's how I know it's straight. So if I click there, now I see that purple circle and I can, you know, make it better. And I can even drag this one over more and so on and so on. But I mean, you kind of get the idea. So I'll let that go. And we'll go put it in place. So I'm going to insert before. And now that is gone. So yeah, we're going to have a tie here, but that's an outline that no one's going to see. It's going to be underneath this satin stitching. So that's one scenario if you do want it to stitch from bottom up. Or you could do my cheater's way, the first way I did it. I'm just holding shift and I'm going to right click and group. You could do my first way, which was just winging it and seeing if it'll all stay in place because I stitched these caps first. So you'll just have to kind of try that and see which works better. So for right now, I'll bring back this one, long press, come on. And this one, I'm gonna hide it and I'm gonna just bring it to the top. Insert before, and I'm going to actually turn it yellow so that I know in editor to delete it. But it'll always be here in Studio in case I do a test sew in this first cheater method, this first cheater object, I'm calling it. If this one doesn't work out, at least I'll have this one here in Studio. Now this, I'm going to just delete this. I don't really need it anymore. That was the original one I made at the beginning of the video. So then that would be the V. So we would just go back to this one, go into 3D. And then we have the E to contend with. So that would be the next video. And now that I think of it, since I'm splitting this up into 2 videos, I should probably show you how I set all of my connections to, you know, a 4.0 millimeter stitch length. And normally I'd save that for the end of the design because, you know, the E is going to have connections as well. I also should have set that outline here, down here. So I'll just right click on it down here and I'll go to params and I'll just set the stitch lengths to 4 mils. Hit enter twice since I clicked in this field. If you click up here, you only have to hit enter once, but since I already clicked in the field, hit enter twice. And I'm going to hit Control 1 to bring it back into view. I know you can't see it, I'm in 3D, but you can go into vector mode. So that's the outline. Click Apply. And for some reason it's not showing now. I've got this down here. Okay, it's doing something now. Okay, that took a while. Let me just hit done. I know why, because it's as soon as you generate stitches, if it's hidden, and it is hidden up here, it doesn't show anymore. So I forgot I had it hidden. But at any rate, let me then show you how I do the connections. So instead of going through and selecting them all one by one, you just go over here to select. I'm only going to select the green because I don't want to ungroup this yellow one. So I'm just going to select that, hold shift, and I'll just select everything. And then when I go to select, if you click select subset instead of new selection, and you have to click it again. Now when I go to objects, it's only going to select the connections that I have selected. This is my subset over here. Connections, all connections. And then they're all selected and everything's ungrouped that has a connection in it. Now why this one didn't ungroup, so it did. It selected the connection here, but it's still showing this as grouped. I guess it's because it didn't ungroup it from the tabs to the satins. That's interesting. So anyways, with all the connections selected, I go into params. You see they got blue lines around them because they're all different. But once I set them all to be 4, this is a connection, so the largest you could do is 1.5 on the min. But if you set the max for 4, I'm just going to click once and hit enter once. If you set the max for 4, whenever there's a straight line or a curve where it can do 4, it will do 4 instead of this. I should probably request that we have our minimum for connection to be bigger than 1.5. You know, our max. Our maximum for our minimum length to be more like, you know, 5 or 6 or something. So, but I guess it does that because, you know, they consider it a connection. Those are supposed to be small. Anyway, so that's how I set it. I hit apply. And I'm pretty sure that everything else is 2.0. You know, on the density for the tabs, the density for the satin is 2.0. Because I did that already. And I'm just changing the underlay as I go from letter to letter and making my decision. So then the next video will be on the E. Now I can go ahead and regroup everything just so that I don't get confused with all these objects. There's the O, and that's a connection to the L, but we're going to just group it with the L. So I'm going to hold shift and come down here. It's easy to know where to stop because you stop at the column. Right click, group. We'll just group 1. And then the V. It stops here. We don't see the column because it's grouped. We don't see the columns icon. So we'll just hold shift. You could see it down here. And right click, group. I'm just going to do group 1 again. If I do group 2, then it keeps, you know, this is group 1 and then group 2. But if you just do group 1, then they all get regrouped all over again into group 1. So there's no separation. So this is all group 1. So, and then there's our E. I'll hit Control S and we'll do this next. Let's get rid of this. Guides. Erase guides. So there is your L, your O, and your V, and they look pretty good. This L is tying off up there, so that's not the tie on, that's the tie off. And that, you can't really get around that. So there you go, guys. We'll see you in the next video when we do the E. And then in the E, we're going to talk about making a patch here between this and this because they're perpendicular stitches and they might separate and you'll be able to see the foam, so you have to put a patch underneath. And then we're going to also talk about redigitizing parts of it so that it stitches from the bottom up. So that'll be the E, and we'll also put our caps on the ends of the E. All right, we'll see you in the next video. Bye.